Hello, 6th graders. We are in Unit 6, our integers unit. Our lesson today is on multiplying and dividing integers. Our learning target, I can multiply and divide integers. All right, when we are multiplying integers here, remember that multiplication is the same as repeated addition. So if we have 4 times negative 3, that means that we are taking negative 3 and adding it 4 times over. So if we had negative 3 plus negative 3 plus negative 3 plus negative 3, that equals 12. You just add 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 12, and you keep the signs. And it shows it here on a number line for you to see. Okay, and by the commutative property of multiplication, 4 times negative 3 is the same as 3 times negative 4. You can flip the numbers and it still equals the same. So here is the key thing to know. That multiplying integers with different signs, the product of two integers with different signs is negative. So if you have a positive times a negative, your answer is going to be negative. If you have a negative times a positive, your answer is going to be negative. If the signs are different, the answer will be negative. And that's shown here in the two examples that you can see. Okay, so let's try some. Multiplying with different signs. Well, you multiply like normal. 3 times 5 is 15. Since we have a positive and a negative, that means our answer is negative 15. 6 times 8, multiply like normal, that's 48. But since we have a positive and a negative, the signs are different, that means our answer is negative. Pause, try the next two on your own and come back and check. 9 times negative 2, well, a positive times a negative is a negative. 9 times 2 is 18. 7 times 4 is 28, and since one is a negative and one's a positive, that means our answer is negative since the signs are different. Okay, so now let's look at this. We have a positive times a negative, which we know is a negative. We just talked about that. So 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Now if we take 1 less here and we do 1 times negative 3, our answer is negative 3. If we take 0 times negative 3, anything times 0 is always 0. So if you notice over here, each of these, we are adding 3 each time. So 0 plus 3 would be 3. So that means a negative 1 times negative 3 is a positive 3. And a negative 2 times a negative 3 is a 6. So therefore, a negative times a negative equals a positive. So anytime you have a negative number times a negative number, your answer will be positive. And they show it here on the number line for you to see as well. So again, down here, the product of two integers with the same sign is always positive. Just like a positive times a positive is positive, same thing, negative times negative is a positive. And again, they have examples there for you to see. All right, so let's try some here multiplying with the same sign. So we multiply like normal. 11 times 9 is 99. But a negative times a negative is a positive. So you can just leave it as 99. Negative 4 to the second power. So let's write that out. Negative 4 to the second power. Now remember, when something's to the second power, it means that number times itself. So that means negative 4 times negative 4. Well, 4 times 4 is 16. Negative times a negative is a positive. Let's go back to this 11 times 9. Since there's nothing between the 11 and the parentheses, remember there is a multiplication there. All right, now we have 3 numbers. So let's start with the first two. Negative 3 times negative 4 would be a positive 12, because a negative times a negative is a positive. Now we're going to take that and multiply by a negative. So 12 times 2 is 24. However, we have a positive and a negative, so our answer is negative. Okay, so if you have 3 numbers, take 2 of them and multiply, and then multiply by the third one to figure out how your sign should be. Pause here, try these next 3 on your own before you come back and check. Well, 12 times 5 is 60, and a negative times a negative is a positive, so we've got positive 60. Negative 5 to the second power, negative 5 squared means negative 5 times negative 5. Well, 5 times 5 is 25, and a negative times a negative is a positive. negative 7 times negative 5 would be is 35. Positive because it's a negative and a negative. And then we're going to take that and multiply it by negative 3. And again, those parentheses are just holding the negative with the number. So let's go 35 times 3, 15, 9, 10, 105. So we've got a positive times a negative, so our answer is negative. Now, division is related to multiplication because it's just the opposite. So if we have a multiplication problem, 2 times 6, we could do division, the opposite, 12 divided by 2 equals 6. So they are related. Okay, the factor, that's the number that's being multiplied, is also the quotient or the answer in a division. Okay, so you can see how they're related. 4 times 5 equals 20, and then if you take 20 divided by 4, you end up with the 5 that you had. Since multiplication and division sentences are related, you can use them to find the quotient of integers with different numbers. So again, if you have different signs on multiplication, your answer is a negative. Same thing with division. If you have different signs for division, your answer is negative. So when you're dividing integers, make sure you have this part written down. The quotient of two integers with different signs is negative. So if you have a positive divided by a negative, your answer will be negative. If you have a negative divided by a positive, your answer will be negative. Okay, so it equals a negative, which you can see in the examples here. A positive 33 divided by a negative 11 equals negative 3, and so on. All right, so let's try some dividing with different signs. So 80 divided by negative 10. Well, 80 divided by 10 is 8. Since we have a positive and a negative, our answer is negative. Negative 55 divided by 11. Well, 55 divided by 11 is 5. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. Pause here, try these next three on your own, and then come back and check. 20 divided by negative 4. 20 divided by 4 is 5. A positive divided by a negative is a negative. Negative 81 divided by 9. Well, 81 divided by 9 is 9. And a negative divided by a positive is a negative. Negative 45 divided by 9. 45 divided by 9 is 5. Negative divided by a positive equals a negative. Okay, same thing when we are dividing with the same signs. Just like we had, if we have a positive divided by a positive, our answer is positive. Same thing goes when they are negative. So we have that opposite part here where we have negative 5 times 4 is a negative 20. So if we take a negative 20 divided by a negative 4, we get that 5. So if the signs are the same, the answer is positive. So if we have a negative divided by a negative, our answer will be positive. And then they have some examples there. So let's go through and solve these ones. Negative 14 divided by negative 7. Well, 14 divided by 7 is 2. A negative divided by a negative makes a positive. Negative 24 divided by negative 4. 24 divided by 4 is 6. And a negative divided by a negative is a positive. I'm adding the positive sign on there just for a reminder. Usually we wouldn't write that on there. Negative 9 divided by a negative 3. Well, 9 divided by a 3 is 3, and a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Negative 28 divided by negative 7 would be a positive 4. Study tip here. Dividing integers with the same or different signs, follow the same rules as the ones for multiplication. All right, evaluating an expression, so we're just plugging the numbers in. Evaluate PQR. So P is negative 3. They're connected, which means we're multiplying. Q is 4 times R, which is negative 1. So we multiply the first two numbers together. 3 times 4 is 12. A negative times a positive is a negative, times by a negative 1. Well, 12 times 1 is 12, and a negative times a negative is a positive 12. Evaluate negative 16 divided by x if x equals negative 4. So we're going to plug that in for x. Negative 16 divided by negative 4. Well, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Pause, try these two on your own, and then come back. Evaluate x, y, z if x equals negative 7, y equals negative 4, and z equals 2. So we're going to plug those numbers in. Negative 7 times negative 4 times 2. Well, a negative times a negative is a positive. 28 times 2. 28 times 2, 16, equals 56. Evaluate a divided by b if a equals negative 9 and b equals negative 3. Well, negative divided by negative equals a positive. 9 divided by 3 equals positive 3. Okay. So the biggest things to remember, that a negative times or divide by a positive is a negative, and a negative divided by or multiplied by a negative equals a positive. All right, that's the end of the video. If you're confused, go back and rewatch it. Come with questions for class tomorrow.